What's up, guys? Welcome to a special episode today. We're going to be talking about a hot topic, and why not bring up a guy who is the biggest fan of this player? So, we have the Bratt Pack today, and obviously, that is in relation to Jesper Bratt, who has been in the news this week in terms of his contract. Obviously, we know that Bratt filed for $6.5 million per season. The Devils filed for 4.15. We just wanted to say thanks, Bratt, for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. I was really looking forward to it when you guys invited me on. I took a look at the YouTube page. Pretty impressive. I get a few invites here and there to do some podcasts, and I always check out the view counts, the listener counts to know what to expect. And when I saw you guys had a fair amount of views on each video, it was like, all right, let's do this. I'm excited.
Thank you. It really means a lot, to have recognition from somebody that, that has a huge following on Twitter. Obviously we see that you're followed by Zach Boychuk and Vitek, who's really huge on YouTube. So for us, it was a no-brainer to ask you, but also to read up on your tweets and see how devoted you are as a Devils fan. It's always nice to see someone that, covers their favorite team as much as you do. So thank you so much for coming on. And in terms of our giveaway. We're going to be announcing a giveaway on August 15. Whoever wins will get to choose their NHL jersey of choice. In order to do that giveaway, we're going to have to hit 1,000 subscribers by August 15. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe now. So guys, let's get into it. Let's talk about,
The New Jersey Devils.
obviously what's going on right now. And let's start off with, Jesper Bratt. What's going on with him? Is he gonna sign? Is
Yeah.
it possible that he may get traded? So we'd like to hear your thoughts on that, Brad.
Yeah. So today's been a really, really crazy day. A lot going on. Um, if you asked me before today if I thought he was going to sign a contract, I would have said yes. I was pretty confident. A lot of these things come down to the wire, and it's very last minute. And I still had faith. They'll just do it last minute. It's okay. But I gotta say, we're getting into the night now, and the deadline is 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm starting to lose faith here. I don't think it's gonna happen.
So you think he gets traded, or you think that like they're just gonna go to arbitration and then like they're gonna settle it on maybe a 1-2 year deal and that's about it, and then just
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're just going to go to arbitration. The thing about that is like special in his case is he actually has 2 years left of RFA status, and Bratt himself is the one that elected for arbitration, which means the Devils as the team get to choose the length. So I think they're going to choose 1 year so that they get a chance next summer again when he's an RFA to try and sign him again.
Okay. I think like at least for me personally, what's surprising to me, and like I watched a little bit of Jesper Bratt. Obviously, I had him on my fantasy team too, so it kind of helped. You paid attention to him a little bit more. But in terms of that, I think he was very impressive for the Devils this season. And I looked at the arbitration filings that Elliot Friedman had tweeted out, and apparently the team's at 4.15 million, the players at 6.5 million. I personally think that the Devils at 4.15 million, at least for what Jesper Bratt did last year, I think is a low ball offer in my opinion. And I think, for a guy who's 24 or about, I think he turned 24 today or tomorrow, or he's turning 24 if he's not already. But, he's super young player, and he had 73 points in 76 games last year. I'm expecting a guy to potentially do that again next year or close to that. So I just think that at that money that the Devils had or potentially wanting to give him, I think is a really low ball offer in my opinion. And I'm just surprised because, I looked at Brad as a guy who could potentially, him and Hughes potentially be guys for the future. And now it's looking not less likely, but it just looks like it's heading towards a divorce at some point.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing about the numbers. They are so particular to arbitration. The from and this is totally me, as a fan speculating off of what I've heard on social media and whatnot. I don't have any sources or anything, but from what I've been seeing, from what I've been reading, they did make a very, very generous long-term offer to him. 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it was, at a number at 6.5 or higher, and he said no, that he only wants a shorter deal. For the sense that if he signs an 8-year contract, he's up for his next contract when he's 32 and probably not going to sign a big one then. So he said, I'd rather do 3 or 4 years and I would get, I'd be a free agent when I'm 27, 28, and then I can go for another big contract instead. So the Devils were like, no, if you want that, 6, 7, however many they offered, you got to sign with us long term. We got to lock you in at that price. Whereas Bratt came back and was like, no, I want the shorter term so that I can re-up, get paid again, get even more in 3 or 4 years. So that is a 1-year offer. That $4.15 million, that is them saying, look, we want long term. We'll give you more for long term. If you want to stick to this short term, we're not going to give you that same offer.
Yeah.
I mean, listen. I mean, like, I think all the players nowadays are doing that, right? I mean, you saw that in Toronto too with Matthews, Marner, and Nylander. They're trying to get shorter deals and get big money so that in the next contract they could get paid more. Which, I mean, it's a fair play to them, right? I mean, at the same time, it gives them the chance. If they're not a playoff team or if they don't see themselves winning anytime soon with that franchise, they could always leave. So,
absolutely, and he's betting on himself. He's got a inexperienced agent who doesn't have a lot of clients. Bratt is his big client, so he's trying to grab every dollar he can, and that seems like it's what they're doing. So I don't think they're going to arbitration because they're on bad terms or have beef with each other or bad blood or whatever. I think Jesper is just trying to cash out as much as he can, and that means a contract in 4 years, not 8 years, and they just can't agree on that. So I think those numbers are strictly arbitration 1-year deal offers. I really, really don't believe the Devils went so low with a long-term contract.
And in terms of like Jesper Bratt, looking at his career so far, 5 seasons with the New Jersey Devils, he was a 30-point player up until this season where he explodes and gets 73 points. So do you think maybe the New Jersey Devils give him this offer in terms of, thinking, maybe this is a one-time thing? Or do you think, it's kind of like a short-term deal, but also prove yourself deal as well?
Well, I think that so watching Jesper Bratt the past 5 years, those 4 seasons where 30, 40 points, whatever, and if you look at some, they're actually shortened COVID seasons. He was on pace for more. I think last year, before this year, he was on pace for more like 55. But it's one of those things where he's slowly gotten better and better to the point where we kind of knew this breakout 70-point season was coming. And I think the organization knew it was coming, and I think that they're willing to pay him based on the player that they think he is now. I don't think it's a thing where they're really thinking he's a 30-point player who had one good year. However, when it comes to arbitration, they are going to try to prove that, even if they don't believe it, because once you get to arbitration, it's like contract court. You're trying to use anything you can get, even if you don't even believe it. So they will use that argument that he's a 30-point player. I like I said, I don't even think they believe it, but they're going to say they do.
Yeah. And I mean, my question too is, and obviously we're sticking on the Devils, the Bratt topic, but just kind of implementing him into the team, and obviously with the new acquisitions that the Devils have made this season, obviously with Vitek, Vanecek in net, which we're going to talk about the Devils goaltending in this podcast, because I think that's been probably the biggest.
Everything, even their defense as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think goaltending in terms of the fact that like last year, I think they went through 9 goalies, I think it was total. And so like the Devils, stabilize themselves in net a little bit with Vanecek and obviously Blackwood, it looks like. And obviously, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the Devils drafting Simon Nemec as well. Obviously there was talks about them being interested in Slafkovsky at one point, and then now obviously the Habs drafted him first overall, and then they decided to go with Nemec on defense. Are you excited about the potential on the Devils defense with Luke Hughes and obviously Nemec coming in as well?
Yeah, so one thing, I have a very firm stance on draft and prospects because I'm going to be honest, I get lost in a sea of prospects. I never know who to, follow and who to attach myself to. So I really try to wait until the draft, see who they get, and then make my decision on if I like them or not. I really try not to look up the guys beforehand and really get into it, because I'm probably going to waste my time on them. A lot of people who end up not getting drafted to the team. Yeah. So I didn't know a lot about Nemec before he got drafted. I was watching the draft live. And, I was hoping for Slafkovsky. I did know a fair amount about him. And I think the Devils did want him. I think that was their guy if he was available. However, he went at number 1. It's how drafts work. You got to move on. And when Shane Wright was still on the board, I was actually in like a live Twitter space at the time with fans of like other teams. So they were like ready to roast me if things went wrong. And when they did not pick Shane Wright, it didn't even matter who they picked. It wasn't Shane Wright. So people were going nuts. People were exploding. I mean, I myself I totally admit it. I was putting on a show. But after the draft, when it ends, sleep on it, wake up the next day, look at Nemec's, NHL comparisons, look at his stats to this point, look at his analytics on, how he's performed to this point. Kid is an absolute stud. There is no two ways about it. His NHL comps are insane. Like his like most comparable full comp is Victor Hedman. Like, yeah, I'm going to take that. Absolutely. So as time has gone on, I've gotten really excited about him, and I think he's going to be a wrecking ball on that blue line.
And I'd also like to add in terms of, Nemec, you have, Severson, you have Hamilton, you have, John Marino they just acquired from the Pittsburgh Penguins, potentially Luke Hughes being in there. There's, in my opinion, I think they have way too many good defensemen.
Yeah.
So do you see one of them potentially being traded now to make room for Luke Hughes or Simon Nemec?
Well,
Yeah.
Luke Hughes has 1 more year, I think, in university, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, he's going
really?
to, but he's going to, I mean, ideally he'll join the team after his college season ends.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it last year with Owen Power and Matty Beniers and guys like that. So I do expect Luke Hughes to join the team, in April, I think, at least for the last like 10 games. But there is an odd man out. They have, 7 guys fighting for 6 spots right now. And the 2 major question marks to me are Ryan Graves and Damon Severson. And they're question marks for different reasons.
Okay.
One is Graves because I'm not sure if he wants to stick around. And if he doesn't want to stick around beyond his contract, then the answer is clear. Get rid of him, get what you can in value for him. And, if he's not going to stick around anyway, just, he goes. The other one, Damon Severson, I think is a question mark because he may want to stick around. I think he does want to stick around, and he has said he wants to stick around, but we have enough, and he's the highest value that is expendable. So
Yeah.
I don't think he's the worst player, but I think he has the highest value out of anyone we can afford to get rid of. So I am interested to see if they kind of take advantage of that.
Well, I'm curious to see what David Severson to me, and I know last year he had a really good year. I didn't watch the Devils that much last year, but the games that I did watch, I was pretty impressed with Severson. I thought he played pretty well under a team that struggled a little bit, and so for me, I think if obviously he's got a year left as well, so I think he's going to be an attractive piece for a team looking to bolster their decor, and one team that I think could be very interested if the opportunity presented itself could be a team like Ottawa maybe. But in terms of that, I'm saying I think I agree with you in the sense of I think he's probably the most valuable player you have in that sense to potentially move. And I think if he does get moved, I could see a decent package going back the other way for New Jersey because I think his contract's good. He's got a year left, and he's 27, so he's still he's hitting his prime at this point. And so it's going to be curious to see what he gets.
Chris, we know that you love defense, so how are you loving the New Jersey Devils' new blue line?
Yeah, listen, I think it's pretty solid. Everybody kind of knows on the show here, like the ongoing thing is that I love defense. Defense is number 1 key in all teams. Like the Islanders. The Islanders have good defense, really good.
I don't know if you should be saying that to a Devils fan though.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We were talking about. Listen, the Devils have an insane defense too. I mean, no one mentioned Dougie Hamilton before, but Dougie Hamilton is a beast. Like, 29 years old, but he's insane. John Marino, listen, I mean, I think they gave up, Ty Smith, I think has a lot more potential. I mean, a lot of people are high on Marino. A lot of Devil fans were okay with that trade. I don't know personally. I thought I think they kind of lost that one because, Ty Smith has a little bit more upside. But Nemec,
Offensively, though, at least.
Yeah.
offensively, Nemec, I think is a great pick. I said it from the beginning. I think he's a top 5. And Shane Wright, listen, Bratt, no offense, but the guys that were no offense to the guys that were giving you a hard time in that tweet, but I said that Shane Wright was going to be kind of a bust. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. And to touch on the Ty Smith from Marino trade,
Not proud of himself now.
it's and it kind of feels the same way with Damon Severson, where there's been a couple guys like Smith and Severson that have different perceptions within the Devils fan base to outside the Devils fan base. And, Severson is a big one because his numbers are good. He's generally pretty good, but he makes these catastrophic bonehead mistakes, once every couple games that drives Devils fans crazy. And it turned the fan base against him, even though he's, pretty good. And Ty Smith is the same way where, he was a not number 1 overall. He was a first round pick who had some Calder votes in his rookie season. But as a Devils fan, if you watch him, the points kind of masked his actual performance. So putting up a lot of assists helped him out, but his defense was no good at all. And his second year was just absolutely disgustingly terrible. So outside the Devils fan base, you got all these guys, much like you guys saying, oh, well, he has this upside. He has this potential, first round pick, got Calder votes. He could still turn into something. But as a Devils fan who's watched him for 115 games, I'm totally okay with, passing up on him. If he's going to develop into something else, let it be with another team. I'm happy we took the safe pick in Marino.
Okay, so you're happy with the return. You didn't expect like maybe a little bit extra.
You know what? I think we could have possibly, really kind of extorted another team to get a little extra out of it. But the thing about Marino that Tom Fitzgerald, our GM, is so big on is team control at, an efficient cost. And Marino has many years left at a decent salary, and that's more attractive than most things to us right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not only that, but I mean, when we did the NHL trade breakdowns that we usually do every time there's a big blockbuster trade, is that we were saying that Ty Smith offensively is the better player, but in terms of defensively, John Marino is that guy. I was seeing a lot of people writing that he's an elite defensive defenseman. I don't know if that's really a term you could really throw around, but
Right.
and I know a lot of Pittsburgh Penguin fans were upset. Obviously they go ahead and trade for Jeff Beachy, which is a whole different story, and they get rid of Mike Matheson, which we're not going to get into. But obviously, they were kind of upset about that. And in terms of, you look at the New Jersey Devils, they needed to become more defensive minded, right?
Yes.
So adding a guy like Marino adds that. Adding a guy like Nemec adds that. So even though Nemec is considered a two-way defenseman,
Right.
so now you look at their defensive core, and it's a very good balance of offensively minded defensemen, also defensively minded defensemen. So I'm looking at their defense, and I think this is like a top 10 defensive core right now heading into the next season. I don't know if I'm going crazy or like just spitting out like anything in terms of looking at what I'm seeing on a lineup, but I want to get your thoughts on that.
On the lineup as a whole?
On their defensive core right now.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing that, like I said, in the Marino trade that was so important is we want guys with term at, decent costs that are going to be here for a long time. And I think we're starting to get that. And one guy I think you mentioned earlier that people kind of forgot, that Dougie Hamilton is such a beast. I mean, guy broke his jaw this season, and he broke, I think it was a toe. I had been saying a finger, but I think I was wrong. I think he broke a toe. He had multiple breaks this year where, he was still playing, and we didn't know about those things. I mean, we knew about the broken jaw because he was playing with a cage on, but we didn't know about the toe or anything like that. The Devils never reported that. So people kind of forgot about him, and he wasn't as good this year. And I think he's poised for a huge, huge comeback season. And when you pair that with guys like Siegenthaler, who fit the mold of Marino of being these, Marino fits the mold of Siegenthaler, but these lockdown defensive defensemen that, the Devils historically have been very good with. Guys like Scott Stevens and, Ken Danico, those kind of guys. This core, and Hughes and Nemec, are going to be on. They're not even on entry level contracts yet. I mean, yeah, Nemec just signed his, but literally going into year one of an entry level contract here. We got guys for a long time, and that's what Fitzgerald is trying to build here. The mold that they're chasing right now is Colorado East. We're not going for 1 cup. We're trying to set ourselves up that when we're ready, we're going for 5 cups. And, building from the ground up with defense, to me, I think they're doing a pretty good job of it.
What my question to you is, and obviously, we're talking about defense, but I think the biggest concern last year, and obviously we mentioned it a little bit more, but I just want to get your thoughts on the Devils' goaltending a little bit. Obviously, we saw what Nico Daws did last year, and I think he honestly under a role that he needed to play because he was kind of forced into it due to the fact that the Devils had no goaltending because of all the injuries that they had. I thought he played pretty well. I know his numbers probably don't show it, but I think in terms of that, I think there's definitely a starter potential in him at some point. But I just want to get your thoughts. They acquired Vitek Vanecek. We saw the issues with Mackenzie Blackwood last year, the heel injury that he dealt with and a few other, personal issues that he had of his own as well. And so my question to you is, do you think that, Mackenzie Blackwood is going to be that guy eventually in New Jersey? Or do you think that with the acquisition of Vanecek, it's kind of a message to the fans and obviously to him as well that, maybe you aren't the guy and we're looking to go in a different direction here?
Yeah, so going into the offseason, Tom Fitzgerald was very, very clear that he wanted a position battle. He wanted 3 guys fighting for 2 spots. So we have Blackwood, we get Vanecek, and we have Bernier, who, for all intents and purposes, should be going on LTIR and hopefully coming back at some point in the season. But, I mean, when you look at Nico Daws last year, I'm not sure that NHL fans as a whole understand just how low on the depth chart he was when he got called up. We had Blackwood, Bernier, Wedgwood, Schmid, and then Daws. Daws was 5th in line to be a starter, and he was a starter for half the season. So he did a great job for what he is, but he was supposed to be an AHL backup. He was never supposed to be an NHL starter. So, when you look at Blackwood coming back and Vanecek coming in, is that quite the, superstar goalie that a deep playoff team needs? No, it's probably not. But is it a massive, massive improvement over last year? Yes, absolutely. So I really hope Blackwood and Vanecek kind of challenge each other and try to, fight for that starting role, and hopefully that makes them better. Blackwood's coming off a lot of injuries. He had COVID, then he busted his heel, then he got COVID again. So he hasn't been the same for 2 years now. And again, that's another thing, NHL fans outside of New Jersey won't know or really be aware of. But if he comes back full health, good lungs, good heel, I think we're going to see a different Mackenzie Blackwood. I do think he has that potential to, be the guy that Team Canada thought he was going to be this past year.
Obviously, we're going to see a 1A, 1B situation, at least to start the season. That could always change throughout the season. Obviously, there's always that one goalie that proves themselves to be the clear starter. If you had to decide right now who that clear starter would it be Vanecek or Blackwood?
It's got to be Blackwood until Blackwood proves that it's not. I think he has, been given every opportunity to show that he's the guy. So I think this year is a very big year for him to show, are you the guy or not? But right now it's his chance to do it.
I want to talk a bit about the forward core. And obviously, I know you said that you don't really follow prospects, but obviously you follow the Devils. And so I'm curious to know, do you think Alex Holtz makes the team this year out of camp? Or do you think that he still stays one more year in Utica? Because I know the AHL team was pretty good this year in Utica down there for New Jersey. So just your thoughts. I watched a bit of Holtz because obviously we're from Montreal, so the Laval Rocket played Utica quite a bit. So we got to see Alex Holtz quite a bit, and I was pretty impressed with him. So I want to know, do you think he potentially has the opportunity to crack the team and make an impact right out of training camp, or do you think he maybe needs one more year in Utica?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to comment on the Utica Laval Twitter beef from earlier this season. That was some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen, man. That was crazy. I know Cole Caulfield's dad got involved. I'm sorry if you have a big Montreal and Laval following here, but man, that was insane. I could not believe that happened.
We're Habs fans, so obviously for us it was a little bit more of well, I mean it was a little dig, but obviously we were upset about it for maybe 2 minutes, then we got over it.
Yeah. But yeah, so Alex Holtz, he was the kind of guy. I mean, he was a 7th overall pick, last year, and it was kind of questionable if he was even going to make the team last year. And he got, I think, his full 9 games to try out, but he got put with like the 4th line and got like 6 minutes a night, and he didn't look that good. And people were like, yeah, he doesn't look that good, but he also didn't really get much of a chance. So going into this year, I think he's going to be ready personally, but I think even if he's on the edge, like even if they are not quite sure if he's ready or not, you have to give him a chance at least. I think he is going to be on the team at least for the first 9 games again. If they put him in a top 6 role and he really doesn't look ready, I can see them sending him back down for another year. But that's another thing like Blackwood, where it's like they've set him up for the chance. It's up to him to take it, but he's going to get that chance. And, personally, I think he'll be okay this year.
If Holtz were to make the roster, there's been a lot of rumors about, trying to move Tatar and also Johnson.
Yeah.
You think that's quite possible that either or gets traded? And what type of return are you expecting for a guy like Tatar or Johnson to make room for a guy like Holtz?
So it's kind of a weird dynamic there. Between Tatar and Johnson, I think Johnson's going to be the one to go. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I don't think Tatar really, the only reason people go for him is because he carries a $4.5 million cap hit and he hasn't been an absolute superstar, but they never really expected him to be. He was always kind of a Band-Aid while the young guys came up. I think Johnson's kind of the odd man out of, they expected him to be a little better and he really just hasn't been. He carries $3.4 million of a cap hit. But here's the thing that's really, really important about that. The way that his contract is set up, he's only owed $750,000 in cash. So he carries a 3.4 cap hit, but the team would only have to pay him $750,000. So if you look at a team like Arizona or, another team that's just trying to get above the cap floor, they need that 3.4 and they don't have to pay all that cash. He becomes attractive in that way. So I think Johnson gets traded. I'm really not looking for much of a return. We're kind of just handing over cap. So, it's probably a mid to late round pick, if that. But I do think Holtz comes up. I think Zetterlund comes up. I think Tyce Thompson gets a look this year. Maybe not a full season, but if there's injuries, he'll get up. And I think they bought out Yanni Kuokkanen a couple weeks ago to make room for at least one of those guys to come up. I think Johnson getting traded makes room for a second guy to come up.
And just one thing quickly. I'm fascinated by this because actually I just saw this on Cap Friendly, but Andreas Johnson actually has a modified no trade clause this season, which is a bit weird.
That is weird.
So he's got a 10-team no trade list. So I guess if the Devils do decide to move him, he kind of decides where he wants to go. So that's interesting, but it's only for this season. So I guess kind of the way the contract is structured when he signed it with the Leafs was that the final year would be a modified no trade clause. So maybe that makes it less likely that he gets moved because I don't know if Fitzgerald would want to, have to deal with, certain teams wanting him. But just something that I noticed that, maybe could, get talked about.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible. The only thing that would make me think that he might waive a modified no trade clause is like I said, he really has been kind of performing under expectations thus far. So if he wants to go somewhere, even if it's a bad team like Arizona, it's somewhere that he can get more ice time and more of a chance to prove himself as an individual to try to get another contract next year that might be kind of attractive for him to waive it.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, you wanted to add something before?
Yeah, actually, because we were talking about trades and potential moves, and this comment is pretty interesting. I mean, we'll probably get into a little debate here from Mr. Eddie. What do you think about trading for Vladimir Tarasenko or Kyle Connor, someone who puts in 30 goals consistently? And then we have here Tarasenko. That's going to be a hefty trade. I mean, obviously. I mean, do you think it's a possibility? Do you want that to happen? I don't think that would happen. But.
I'm not against the players themselves, but the one thing I keep coming back to is the same thing that Tom Fitzgerald keeps coming back to is we want players not just who are going to put in 30 goals this year, but that are going to be on the Devils for the next 5, 6, 7 years. And when you look at a guy, like Tarasenko, who has 1 year left on his deal, there's no way they're going for him without an extension already in place. We don't want 1 year of Tarasenko. So I like those players. They're attractive players. Would love to add some extra scoring. It just doesn't make sense for us to throw away the assets that we're building for, a 1 year guy. So I don't see it happening.
So Eddie's trade proposal, because he's kind of threw it out there, it would be Holtz and a first round pick. And then,
I don't think
a little debate going on here. First round pick next year's Bedard. No one wants to give that up. I mean, that's kind of understandable, especially, the draft
will make the playoffs, right?
It's not just Bedard.
Right.
The draft is pretty loaded.
Well, there's a couple guys too. I mean, Bedard's first, Michkov's second. I've heard a couple names thrown around at third. There's multiple names that they're looking to go pretty high. So any first round pick that's going to be traded next year, look for a lot of lottery protections. Yeah. Nobody wants to give up their chance at that sweepstakes. And you know what?
The Florida Panthers.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. But the one unfortunate truth about being a Devils fan is we're shooting for the playoffs. We're building this core, but we thought we were doing that last summer too. And we got the number 2 overall pick this year. So it's one of those things where, everything in me wants to say it's okay to give up a first round pick because we're going to try to make the playoffs and, we're not going to be anywhere near the lottery. But as we saw this year, sometimes it happens, man. And you can't just give away your chance.
And in terms of another player that's being thrown around, even in our live stream yesterday with Stefan Rosner, someone was mentioning possibly Timo Meier being traded from San Jose to the Islanders to help Anthony Barzal, and now again you have John Sumner saying that the Devils need to go after Timo Meier. So what are the possibilities of San Jose receiving calls on a player like Timo Meier? Is that possible? Are they going through a rebuild? Or do you think they're just going to go with the team they have right now? Because we know that Timo Meier is currently their best player offensively, and he's still very young. So wouldn't you want a player like that to stick around if you're going through a rebuild? Or do you try to trade him right now since he has a lot of value?
I don't know much about where the Sharks are coming from. So I don't know what their fans think is going to happen with him. The only thing I can speak on is what Devils fans think of Meier and how much we would want to trade for him. And I would love to have Timo Meier. He's a guy that keeps coming up in trade talks for, if we're going to go for someone that makes sense for our team, Timo Meier is a name that is very attractive to us. And one thing that is very interesting right now, as much as I hate to say it, as much as it's going to hurt me to say it, if Jesper Bratt isn't going to stick around, if it goes to arbitration and that relationship goes bad, and he, doesn't want to stick around after arbitration, Jesper Bratt, in a package for Timo Meier does make a lot of sense for both teams, unfortunately,
And what would happen if Bratt does get traded? Do you change your name? What happens?
I was just about to
ask I've been asked that question so many
Nemec.
times, man. Yeah, I've been asked that question so many times over the past few weeks. My answer is, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I really don't know right now. It's a decision that I don't want to make, and I won't make until I have to. But first and foremost, I am a Devils fan. I mean, even if I'm the Bratt Pack for the next 8 years while Jesper Bratt is here, I'll still have to decide what happens after he retires. So, at the end of the day, I'm a Devils fan. It's got to stay a Devils account. But, I don't know. I will always love Jesper Bratt. Still be a fan of him wherever he goes. I don't know if I can keep the account after him.
So my question to you is, and obviously this one I'm gonna address it, and I don't think Devils fans like to talk about it, but I'm curious to know your thoughts a little bit on Johnny Gaudreau going to Columbus. Obviously we
yeah.
know that the Devils were linked to him. In fact, I think there was even rumors that they were there until literally the last minute. And so obviously that must hurt as a Devils fan, just missing out on, a superstar talent like Johnny Gaudreau, who I think next to Jack Hughes would have been absolutely phenomenal. And so just your thoughts a little bit on seeing Gaudreau sign in Columbus, but also, what that does for a team like the Devils, who then turned around and went to go get Ondrej Palat, who I like, but, again, I don't know if that necessarily is a good move in the long term.
And I'd like to add to what Luca's saying. Do you think Palat was a plan B because they couldn't get Gaudreau, or do you think Palat was always in the plans since the New Jersey Devils had so much cap space?
Yeah, so I do think Gaudreau was 1, and I think Palat was 2. I think they were going for both of them. I think it was always the plan to get both of them, and they walked away with one of them. And I think it does look like a plan B, when you only walk away with your second choice instead of 1 and 2. But I do think they were always both of the plan. It just kind of hurts to only walk away with the second one. I mean, if you go into going for 2 guys and you walk away with 1, you're really hoping it's number 1, not number 2. But Gaudreau hurt, man. It hurt. He's a New Jersey guy. He's from New Jersey. He lives here during the summer. I know it's been hard on him the past couple of years with COVID and the border closed. And I know he wanted to get out of Canada and move a little closer home. And when we heard that, and we started to hear that Philadelphia was kind of out of the picture, that they couldn't afford it, that they weren't willing to move around the cap, and they were out. New Jersey, Devils fans thought we were pretty much in the clear. We thought we were getting them. And it really, really stung when, I think it was like 7 p.m. on the day of free agency, where all day we've been hearing, it's down to the Devils and the Islanders. Devils and the Islanders. Devils are ahead. Islanders are, starting to fade away. It looks like he's going to sign with the Devils. And then literally out of nowhere, Friedman puts out Gaudreau to Columbus. It's already done. Oh my God, man. I was losing my mind. It sucked. He was the perfect piece. Long term, we would have paid a lot, but it would have been worth it. Absolute stud. You're right. It would have been amazing with Jack Hughes. Would have been amazing with Jesper Bratt. That one does hurt, man. It really hurts because, we really wanted it. We thought we had it. And at the last minute, boom, it's gone,
I don't mean to throw Luca under the bus on that one, but he kind of jinxed you guys, because while we were doing the free agency live, he's like, watch him go to Columbus as a joke.
I'm sorry. I had a really gut feeling, just like, I don't know what it was. I was just making a joke, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I could watch Columbus just come in for Gaudreau and just steal him. And then it ended up happening, and I'm like, what? I was just joking. I didn't actually think it was actually going to happen. But you know what? NHL is full of surprises. And obviously, one of the comments that was here from John as well says, as bad as Johnny Hockey hurt, I was more disappointed in not getting Matthew Tkachuk. And what's your thoughts? Obviously, you missed out on Gaudreau. You go sign Palat. And then, with the whole Tkachuk saga, do you think the Devils had a chance to get Matthew Tkachuk?
I would also like to add once again to Luca's question. We also heard, there was potential rumors that maybe Jesper Bratt would have been in a deal since he was an RFA that hadn't been signed as well, going to Calgary in return for Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, so that's the thing about Tkachuk is when you look at the return they got, what they wanted, the Devils were never going to match it. It was never going to make sense. And it's the same reason why they didn't get Fiala at the time, because what we had was just not what the other team was looking for, and there really was no forcing it. So, Fiala went for a mid-round pick. We had the 2nd overall. When we had, when we were supposed to get the 6th or 7th pick, it made sense to maybe trade it. But when we got the 2nd overall, it was either 2nd overall or our 2nd round pick. We didn't have a mid-round first pick, and they wanted a first-round pick, so they went mid-round. It's kind of the same thing with Tkachuk, where they got Huberdeau and Weegar, who are both absolute studs. They're amazing, but they both only have 1 year left on their contract. We don't have any superstars that have 1 year left. If we were to, look at a guy like Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, they have 6 left, and Jack has 8 left. it would have worked. The value in the term is just so far apart that I never thought we were getting Tkachuk for that reason. Once that 2 overall pick was gone, Tkachuk was off the table for me.
But also, not only that, to convince Huberto and Uyghur to stay on a team that, in my eyes, I think the rebuild is done after after the offseason they have had right now. It all comes down to, a long-term deal
Right.
and the money as well. And there was a report that came out yesterday that Brad Trey Living, came to Montreal to talk to Huberto to try to convince him, because obviously
Yeah.
you're not going to want to lose him. You don't want to lose Tkachuk for nothing, right? You acquire these players in order to sign them long term. So
Right.
if New Jersey was in that situation to try to convince Tkachuk to sign it, I mean, I think he would have signed regardless, because you look at the team on paper, you look at the prospect pool. This is a very promising team, and
Mhm.
I would just like to get your thoughts on that as well.
Well, it wasn't Tkachuk signing long term that was the issue. It's that we didn't have guys on short term with value to give them, and we were not going to give up our guys with term, because who do we have that's on the same level as Huberto? It's probably Hughes and Hamilton. That's probably it. And they both have, 7 and 8 years left. So it's not that I was worried about Tkachuk signing long term. I think, if we traded for him, it would have been contingent on an extension. We would have had to, re-sign him. But what the situation Huberto is in, we simply don't have. Like, imagine if Jack Hughes had 1 year left and we traded him to Calgary, maybe that'd be comparable. But with 8 years left, term is just so valuable, and especially to the Devils, because like I said, we're really trying to build, a dynasty here. And I know that sounds so silly because we were a second overall pick this year, but we're trying to build this team that is going to be so good for so long that term is the most important thing for us. So I just, without term, we got nothing,
Yeah.
I think we should pull up this comment here from David saying Gaudreau probably disliked the Devils since he was a Philly fan as a youngster. I think we dodged a bullet. What are your thoughts on that?
Maybe he did hate the Devils. I know maybe in Canada, I'm sure, I know you guys have very, very heated rivals. I know you guys probably hate the Maple Leafs just as much as I hate the Flyers and the Rangers.
We don't hate the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, of course we do.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, especially in the New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia area, you got to understand these teams are 45 minutes apart from each other. I can drive to the Philly arena, the New York arena, and the New Jersey arena all in 45-minute drives. So you're around these people every single day. You develop that like hatred almost for anyone wearing that logo. Like, so I have no doubt that Johnny Gaudreau absolutely hates the Devils. The only thing that he said that was like really, really just didn't make sense to me is he didn't want to live in New Jersey because his friends and family were here, and he wanted to live kind of close to them, but not so close to them that they were coming over all the time. That was the weirdest thing I've ever heard a player say. He literally was just like, oh yeah, I'm having my wife and I are having a kid. So we want to be near our family, but we don't, a 6-hour plane ride away or a 6-hour drive away. We don't want to be like a half-hour drive away, because then they'll just come over all the time. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about?
It was kind of a lame excuse. And I think, Devil fans hearing what he had to say immediately just changed channel.
Probably the money too. He probably got a lot more than what the Devils must.
No,
I think the Devils offered more. Wasn't that?
Yeah,
Really?
From what local Devils reporters reported, the Devils offered the same or more. It was purely a decision that he wanted to go to Columbus. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but Columbus actually put out a short video of the GM room, like as it was happening.
I saw it. Yeah,
they had no idea either. They didn't outbid anyone. They got the call, hey, Johnny wants to come here. Do you guys want to sign him? And they were like, yeah, we'll just ask the owners if that's cool, and then we'll get back to you.
They're like, wow, we actually want something.
Yeah, they couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. I saw the video too. I was freaking out. My another question that I'm going to ask you, and just because obviously as Habs fans, we have close ties to this player, and I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts. Obviously, he wasn't great in his time in New Jersey, but PK Subban. Where do you think he potentially ends up? Obviously, we know he's not coming back to New Jersey, but what was your thoughts over the 3 years that he was there in New Jersey, and just where do you think he ends up if he does get offered a contract to stay in the NHL? I don't think he's that bad of a defenseman. I don't. Obviously, he's not PK Subban everyone knows and loves, but I think he's still capable of playing a top 6 role on a team. So I just want to know your thoughts.
I want to piggyback on that comment. I don't think he's a bad defenseman. I think he's bad because of it's bad because of the contract, because he still put up numbers.
Yes.
He's still pretty good, but at $9 million, I think it's outrageous. Yes. I think that's what the problem is. But if he performs the way he did like last season at like a $3 million deal, I don't think anybody would have a big issue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in his last season compared to his whole time in New Jersey is a very interesting thing, because he was here for, I think, 3 years.
Yeah,
it's 3 years. 3. Season 1 was pretty bad. Season 2 started to get even worse, and then something clicked, and I think he really kind of figured out, hey, I'm not as fast anymore. Hey, I don't hit as hard anymore. I got to adjust my game. I got to figure out how I can play at this age now. And it looked like last season he did start to figure that out, and he did get a little better. And, like you said, he wasn't a $9 million player, but he did, settle into his role. And I think he would be a formidable third line pairing on a decent team now. And I really, really loved what he brought with his personality and, all the work he did in New Jersey. I love him as a TV guy. So I think he really did bring a lot, more than on the ice. So I actually liked his time a lot here. But as for a new place for him, my prediction for PK Subban is he ends up in the ESPN booth. I don't even see him being in the NHL, man. I think he's going broadcasting.
Wow. You're not the only one that thinks that, to be honest. I think it's between 2 teams. And actually, Chris, we were speaking about this the other night, which was kind of interesting. I didn't even think that they would probably have, want to sign him. But I think it's between the Habs, but I don't think that's going to happen. But it'd be pretty cool if it did.
I think that's like a pipe dream for everybody.
Yeah.
I think everyone
wants
wants
to retire there in Montreal.
I think Toronto's the clear place to go. It's towards the end of his career. He probably wants to, go back to Toronto.
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense for Montreal.
But Chris mentioned Tampa Bay, and that's it's pretty interesting too.
Yeah, because the reason why I said Tampa Bay essentially is because losing a guy like Ryan McDonough obviously opens up a position for Sergachev to go in the top 4 as opposed to playing third line minutes, especially after that contract he signed. But I still feel like they need some veteran presence on that blue line. So adding a guy like PK Subban to a short-term deal, that's not that expensive, about $2 million, try to get him for a bargain. His agent stated that he wants to play for a contender at this point in his career, and Tampa's gone to the finals 3 times in a row. So I don't see why not. I think that would be a good fit.
Where I think he ends up, and I'm gonna make a very, very interesting prediction here. I think he's going to probably end up in Colorado. And I know that people are going to look at me and say, what are you talking about? But I look at this team, right? And I know that their decor is pretty much already set, but there's rumors there that there was potentially an opportunity to move a guy like Sam Girard, to kind of make space for Kadri potentially, if that's what they wanted to do and go back. But I think as a sixth defenseman there in Colorado, I could definitely see a situation where Subban goes, takes on a role, maybe alongside a guy like, I don't know, Bowen Byram or something, or even at that, and just kind of roll with it. Look, I think he's going to be a third pairing guy in the NHL, and I think, like Chris mentioned, he wants to play for a contender. Colorado has the cap space. I don't think PK is going to cost that much either to bring in. So I think it would make sense in that sense. And I think another team that makes sense too, just because of the fact that they lost John Klingberg, I think Dallas could be a team that, maybe gives Subban an opportunity as well. Throw him on the power play. I think Subban on a power play could definitely help, and especially in Dallas on a second unit, I think he could be a force to be reckoned with a little bit too, and play top 6 minutes. So I think those are 2 destinations that are that could happen. I don't know if it does happen, but I think those could be two destinations that if he's looking to play for a playoff team, those two teams are, playoff bound. Dallas a little bit more, maybe not because of the fact they have to sign Ottinger and Robertson. But like I said, I think Subban's going to be pretty cheap to get. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to cost like $5 million. So, yeah.
No, I don't think he's going to cost a lot. My only thing is if he were to go to a place like Toronto, Colorado, or even Tampa, we're looking at him having to cost like $1 million, where I don't know. Yeah. I feel like he could still command $2 or $3 million. And if he gets, maybe a more middle of the pack team to give him $2 or $3 million, maybe he'll just consider that. But it is, Dallas is a really interesting one because they were reported to like be considering all these big guys, and they didn't end up with any of them. So, they still have some money and some assets. We could still see more from them.
And just going to throw this comment here because actually that was my original prediction. Piqué going to Seattle. We know that he was exposed at the expansion draft. Seattle could have picked him up, but obviously at $9 million, they stayed away from that. But now that he's a UFA, in terms of marketing, I thought that would have been a fantastic move. In terms of a PR move, Piqué is that guy. Try to sell Seattle to the rest of the league in terms of like the hockey world as well. So this year, you look at the team, it just didn't, pan out the way that they hoped for. But I think that would have been a great move in terms of that. But let's talk about a move that flew under the radar that happened, if I'm mistaken, right before the draft, which was Pavel Zacha getting traded to Boston.
No, it was at the free agency.
Oh, it was free agency.
Yeah.
Pavel Zacha that got traded to Boston for Erik Haula, and we all know that Zacha wanted out since the 2022 trade deadline. So what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Yeah, so I'm actually not sure that Zacha himself wanted out. I think the fans wanted him out. It just wasn't working. I feel bad for the guy, but that's really the only thing to say. There's no other way to put it. It just wasn't working. He was a number 6 overall pick, 7 years ago now. And he's had these flashes of maybe he'll be the guy we want him to be. And then he just goes back to not being the guy we want him to be. For a guy, for a team that needs a scoring winger, he just wasn't that. It just wasn't working out. So I wish him all the best in Boston. I really hope he does well. Allegedly he has the potential to do so, but time's kind of running out on that. We wanted a safer pick. I think Erik Haula is a safer pick, and we don't really have to get too far into this. Probably not appropriate for the podcast, but with the Mikey McLeod stuff that's going on with Hockey Canada, we don't know if we need another center or not. He might not be on the team this fall for that reason. So getting Haula is kind of insurance there that we really needed.
Can I ask you a quick question? Because I know I've seen this a lot, and it confuses me as to why people want this to happen. But why do I get the impression that a lot of Devils fans want to get rid of Nico Hischier? And I don't really understand the reasoning as to why. I think
he's injury problems.
I think he's a really good center. I know he hasn't maybe lived up to the first overall potential hype that he was maybe supposed to live up to. But look, he had 60 points in 70 games this year. And every time I'm on like Twitter and stuff, I always see Devils fans complaining about him. And I don't know why. He's 23, and I still think he's got a lot of time to grow and become an even better player than he is. And I know obviously Jack Hughes is the face of the franchise and the future there, but as a second line center, I don't see why people are complaining about Nico Hischier. So I want to know, what your thought is a little bit on him and why Devils fans are, maybe, doing that.
Yeah, no, I see it all the time too. I get it. But you also already said it. It's because people are upset that he's not a superstar, that as a first overall pick, he's not Connor McDavid or, Jack Eichel or whatever. And people kind of do this revisionist history thing where we look at the 2017 draft and Cale Makar went 4th. And the idea is that the Devils somehow failed the draft because they didn't recognize that Makar was the superstar out of the draft and that Hischier was just going to be, the second line center who gets 60 points.
Yeah.
He's not a bad player. He has, honestly, I think he is about to be a superstar. I think this season he took a big step, and he's a really good player. I like him a lot. But the complaint among Devils fans is we gave him the captain the C on his sweater after his like third season. We gave him a 7-year contract, $7 million a year. And we told him, you're the face of the franchise. You're the guy, you're our first overall pick. And people really, really ran with that and thought, okay, well, if he's not McDavid, if he's not Matthews, then it's a failure. But then it's no good. Then we're not doing what we set out to do. And I think that's unfair. I think it's wrong. Like I said, I really like him for what he is. So anyone who's upset with it's just they're dealing with their own expectations.
And just looking at the team itself right now, because I know the big question is, can this team make the playoffs? And
Yep.
Right.
and obviously, like, with the Metropolitan being as strong as it is, or just the East in general, you have Palat, Hischier, Bratt, Sarangovic, Hughes, Mercer, Tatar, Haula, Johnson, Bogfist, McLeod, Bastion, Graves, Hamilton, Severson. The list goes on.
Mhm.
How comfortable do you feel as a Devils fan with this team heading into the season?
So I have spent 55 minutes now talking about how amazing every player and every move is. And you know what? You're going to be surprised. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. Because here's the thing.
That's honest.
And we saw it last year, because I had very high expectations going into last year too, this is a team that on paper, fully healthy, opening night is probably going to be a very good team that, if you put that lineup on the ice every night, they probably would make the playoffs. But just like last year, you get a few injuries or a few guys who slump. We don't have anything beneath that. Our fourth line guys to step up, our AHL guys to step up, it's just not there yet. So I think if Hischier goes down, if Hughes goes down, if Hamilton goes down, if Blackwood especially goes down, we're looking at a different dynamic completely. So if they stay healthy, if everyone performs to how they're supposed to perform, I don't think there's any reason they shouldn't push for a playoff spot. But, year in and year out, it happens every single year. We get those injuries. We get those slumps. I just I don't know, maybe that's just, PTSD fan mentality or whatever, but I think they'll do much better this year. We had 63 points last year. I could see us hitting 85, which is a huge improvement, but it's still not the playoffs.
Do you think Lindy Ruff is the coach that gets them there, or do you think that they have to change?
That was my next question.
So he's an interesting guy because when they hired him for 3 years, and it was right as Jack Hughes got drafted. And I don't know if ownership ever came out and said this, probably not. But I remember when he got hired, the sentiment was he's going to be here for 3 years. He's not going to win a lot of games. We're probably not going to make the playoffs, but he's going to make the young guys look good. He's going to develop them. And when 3 years is up and we're ready to hire like an actual real coach that we think, will win cups, then we will do that. So now he's on year 3 of his contract. Jack Hughes broke out, career year. Jesper Bratt broke out, career year. Nico Hischier, towards the end of the year, the second half of that year, absolute breakout, looks like a stud. I think Lindy Ruff is doing his job, but I don't think his job is to make the playoffs. I think his job is just to make those guys look good. So I think at the end of this year, when they don't make the playoffs again, but they do get a lot better, I think we go out and get a different coach next year, and then I think we start making the playoffs.
And in terms of other moves they can make, because obviously the Devils still have a cap space, but obviously that cap space is going to go towards Bratt if they do get him signed. What other moves do you think the Devils could potentially make, or would you like to see moving forward before the start of the season?
It's a good question, because Devils fans have been so used to having so much cap the past few years. For the past, as far as I can remember, at least we've had like 25 million in cap space per year. But if you look at where they're at right now, they really don't have a lot left. And if they sign Bratt and they have Wood, who also has arbitration coming up, who's probably going to sign before then. Tice Thompson signed today, but Zetterland also needs a contract. We're pretty much out of cap space. I really don't think they're going to make many more moves, if any. I think we're starting to get close to the team that we are putting on the ice. From there, I think they'll look at options like you kind of touched on before, like, Tarasenko, Connor, like a scoring winger, that top 6 scoring guy. but I don't think they pull the trigger on it because I think extensions and term are hard to come by. So I really don't think it's going to happen. I think they're kind of done. I also want to point out real quick because I see it in the chat. Someone said Brunette will replace Lindy Ruff. I totally forgot about that.
He's an
You're
associate coach.
Yeah, you are 100% correct. I absolutely think that. I totally forgot when I was talking, but I think that is why they hired him. I think he's going to be second in command with the purpose of if Lindy Ruff either doesn't do well this season or even if he does well and they need to make the switch next season, I think Brunette is next in line.
You saw Brunette, did under the Florida organization essentially after dealing with the whole Quenneville situation. Him being let go despite being first place in the East in the Atlantic. I would have thought maybe Florida would have gone down, but the way that Brunette came into Quenneville's spot and was so composed and knew what he was doing, and they finished and first place and won the President's Trophy.
Yep.
You would have to think that Brunette, being in charge of such a young team like the Devils, an up and coming team, would make sense. Honestly, I think they should have fired Ruff completely and made Brunette the coach instead of the associate coach. I just don't understand. Nothing has really progressed in terms of what they've done under Ruff. I just feel like adding Brunette right away, start the season with that guy. There's a new system in place, and I think the players would buy into that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid. So we also we got rid of Recchi and Nazardine, and we brought in Brunette and we brought in McGill. And there's a rumor floating around that they might be bringing in one more. I think it does make sense to have Brunette, like you said, put in a new system, get guys to buy in, do all that, and just run with it. But I also think there's value in have him be around for a year, let the guys get to know him, let him get to know the team. And, when Ruff is done, and who knows, it could be 2 weeks into the season for all we know. Devils come out and start, 4-10. Brunette could be taken over way quicker than we think. But assuming that, I'm putting, knock on wood, that Ruff at least does a semi-competent job here, I have no problem, scoring 85 points this year, missing the playoffs by a little bit, but getting a lot better. And then when we're really ready to kick it in high gear, that's when you put in Brunette and you put in that new system and you get those guys to buy in to a guy that they already are familiar with a little bit. So I can totally see both sides of that, but I'm okay with what they're doing.
I just wanted to say something before, because you said something. You said that you didn't believe the Devils were going to make the playoffs, and I actually think, I'm not gonna turn around and say the Devils will, but I personally believe that if a guy like Dawson Mercer takes an extra step this year, and if Sharon Govich continues to play the way he's been playing, I would not be surprised to see the Devils make it in a wild card spot. I know the Metro is a tough division to be in, but if you look at where other teams are, right, like Philly's probably out of it. Columbus, I know they got Gaudreau, but are they really going to be in it? I don't know if Columbus is really in it either. They could be, but I don't know. The Islanders are kind of uncertain unless they get Kadri, and even then, we saw what they did last year. So I think New Jersey definitely has a chance to make the playoffs, and I know that you mentioned that as well. I just think if Dawson Mercer takes an extra step, and I think he was good this year, I think if he takes an even bigger step this year as well, they added Palat as well, I would not be surprised to see New Jersey in a wild card spot, in my honest opinion, because I really like them, and I think they're an underrated team in the league, and I think they underperformed last year.
I would like to add to that as well. You look at how strong New Jersey got this offseason, Detroit and Ottawa,
and Buffalo.
Buffalo, them too, and they progressed very well last season, even despite them not making the playoffs. You would have to think that Boston is not making the playoffs, and if Toronto's goalie tandem does not work out, they're not making the playoffs as well. So
I don't know about that. I think the Leafs make it no matter what.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there, and what happens with Washington without Nicholas Backstrom as a top center on the roster as well. So I think Carolina's safe. The Rangers are safe. Pittsburgh, after what they've done, they're in win now mode, so they're safe. Florida, they're pretty much the same team that they were before the trade deadline, which was still first in the Atlantic. So I think they're fine. So it would be surprising to see Tampa fall down, but I would really have to think that maybe Toronto and Boston would be the two teams that could potentially not make the
I
playoffs.
would say
Uh,
Washington too, to be honest.
Washington, I think they're
I
safe
don't know.
after all the
Any team that has Alex Ovechkin, you can't count it out.
yeah.
That's how I see it.
I mean, yeah, but
Any team that has Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, or Alex Ovechkin on it, and Nathan McKinnon, you probably shouldn't count out, in my opinion. So
Yeah, the only problem is Washington, the Islanders, and Pittsburgh are the three oldest teams in the league this year.
yep.
So, and they're not really getting any younger. So, especially with Pittsburgh, we've looked at them where with Crosby and Malkin, Letang, we've looked at them as, well, these guys have to slow down eventually, right? And we've said that for like 3 years now, and they just haven't. They simply have not. Same thing with Ovechkin. They said, oh well, he's going to start slowing down. We're going to see some deterioration. The numbers will start to fall a little bit, and they just haven't. They haven't. So it's one of those things where every single year we talk about it, and every single year there's that possibility that one of those teams falls off, and it's got to happen. It's got to happen eventually. It's got to be one of these years, even though it hasn't happened yet. So, Washington, Pittsburgh, and the Islanders are all on the verge of possibly falling off like that. Got to think at least one or two of them do.
Yeah, and I think I personally think it's more likely Pittsburgh falls, and I know I might sound crazy on that, but I look at their team and I'm like, you lose Letang and Malkin for majority of the year next year, and I just don't know if they're able to do it again. I know they did it this year, but like, I like you mentioned, they're one of the oldest teams in the league, and even the Islanders. I think if they don't end up signing Kadri, I think they've already they've downgraded there, and I know they were one of the best defensive teams in the league last year, but that team can't score goals if their life depended on it. And so if that continues this season, I do see, New Jersey getting in easily. I think, and I mentioned New Jersey being an underrated team and a team that underperformed. I think if New Jersey had competent goaltending last year, they're probably in it, because I think they lost a lot of hockey games by maybe 1 or 2 goals that, if they have a goaltender that's, more NHL capable, or they don't have that many injuries to their goaltenders, maybe they get a save or 2 here and there, and they get a couple of more wins. So I don't think the Devils necessarily are far off, and I think that they're maybe 1 or 2 big pieces away from potentially being a consistent playoff team in the Metro. That's just my opinion.
The way I see it in terms of New Jersey, if they make the playoffs or not, it all comes down to the progression. It all comes down, can this young core translate and become competitive and consistent, and reach their not their full potential, but at least close to their potential, reach, start, entering their peak essentially, and starting to click, obviously, with the chemistry and everything that obviously you need to be a successful team in a regular season. But also, when you look at New Jersey, the Senators, Buffalo, and Detroit on paper, they have, arguably better teams than Pittsburgh and Boston, in my opinion. So, in terms of having a good mix of youth and veteran presence. So, if that can translate into real life, into the actual regular season, I think that's another factor as well. One thing I would like to bring up, because I know it started a lot of controversy online, is the article that the Score wrote considering a Severson plus more for JT Miller trade.
Severson plus, I'm sorry, Severson and who?
Severson and like more included
and
in
more.
the deal.
Oh my God.
For JT Miller.
I spaced out for just one moment. I thought
Yeah, no
about, because the
problem.
Devils used to have a defenseman, John Moore, and I was like, wait, he's not on the team, is he?
No.
So I'm sorry there. It really comes back to term. I like it. I like it on paper. It's got to be an extension. It's got to be part of it, and there's really just no way around it, unfortunately.
Yeah, JT Miller is an expendable player in terms of like the positions he's able to play, the wingers, and also like the center as well. But you look at their center depth. You already have Heischer and Hughes. You would have to assume that Miller would be brought in to play as a winger.
Right.
And like you were saying before about Severson as well. He would be one of the man out if a deal were to be involving one of the defensemen, because there's kind of a logjam going there.
Right.
So I don't know what you guys think about that proposal that was written by the score. If you think it's ludicrous,
I think that, like, I mean, to be honest, JT Miller, I think, has been linked with every single team in the NHL since there's been rumors about it. And it's not that I don't believe it and stuff. It's just like literally every single day you hear a new team being in on JT Miller. And so I think he fits in New Jersey. I think he would be a perfect fit in New Jersey along with Brock Besser. I think if Brock Besser became available, and I know he was at one point, he would have been a perfect fit in New Jersey. But I think that for a guy like Severson, I think for Vancouver, you look at where JT Miller is at and the numbers that he has. Vancouver's going to ask for a hefty price for him, and I just don't know if the Devils have necessarily what it takes or what they're willing to give up in order to get a player of JT Miller's caliber to come to New Jersey. So I think that if they do make that trade, I think it would make a lot of sense because JT Miller does fit, I think, what New Jersey's trying to do. Kind of like how they missed out on Johnny Gaudreau. I think JT Miller next to Jack Hughes would be absolutely fantastic. So,
and Chris, what are your thoughts on that proposal?
I mean, listen, I think, like Lucas said, JT Miller would be a perfect fit on New Jersey's team. New Jersey has an abundance amount of defensemen, so they could part ways with one. Like Bratt said, Severson's the most valuable one, and it helps out Vancouver. Vancouver, to be honest, I mean, defense wise, I mean, they got big names, but they're not great on defense. Quinn Hughes, I mean, yeah, he's amazing offensively, but defensively, it's kind of questionable. Oliver Ekman-Larsson's probably one of the worst contracts in the league. That top 10 list that we reviewed on another video. And Tyler Myers, listen, I mean, him too, like $6 million, 32 for what he does. It's a bit overpriced too. Their defense needs to get slightly younger, and I think they need that little, boost and I think a change will help that. So, I mean, Severson and a first round pick is enough for Miller. I don't know. I mean, you would probably have to maybe throw in something else.
Oh, they suggested that more would have been added to Severson if they were traded for Miller.
But even at that, does adding Miller guarantee that you're making the playoffs? Probably not. So they'll probably get another, a pretty high pick too, or somewhat high.
Yeah, and Miller needs to sign an extension too.
And with a loaded draft like that, I forgot who mentioned it in the comments before, but you don't want to give up a draft, that could potentially lead to a very good player, especially that the whole draft is loaded next year. I would, if you're gonna trade your first round pick and another player that's pretty decent for one guy, who it's not even for sure he's coming with an extension. I mean, unless the trade that's included. You got to be certain that this guy, you get him, you're making the playoffs, and even with him there, I don't see no guarantees.
And Chris, do you think they make the playoffs?
Personally, no. With all the other teams that they have to compete with, I mean, I think the Islanders are out for sure, as well as sorry, I'm blanking out here. Sorry about that. I think the Capitals as well. Sorry, that's what I was thinking of. The Capitals. I think they're gonna be battling out with maybe one of those bottom guys, but Ottawa is up there too. Florida I think is gonna be the one dropping. Toronto's still gonna make it. I think it's tough. Listen, I don't if they do make it, it's probably gonna be that year. I forgot what year it was where Columbus, and the Habs were kind of neck and neck, and Columbus just won by one.
Oh, I think it was 17. I think it was 17, 18. It might have been 17.
It's going to be one of those
18,
races.
19.
I think it's going to be one of those races. It's going to be very, very, very close if they do make it. So, I wouldn't put my money on.
So teams are going to be battling out with over 90 points this season.
In the East, definitely. It got for the longest time the West was so powerful.
Yeah, no, it's the East.
It's cool to see the East, being the powerhouse. So.
I mean, it's cool. It's cool for that. For any team that wants to tank for Bedard. I mean, it's cool for them, but not the teams that want to compete.
Listen, I think if you do get JT Miller, I think you're one more solidified player away from maybe being in that playoff, in a guaranteed playoff spot. But just getting him, I think you're gonna need a lot more than that.
And guys, sorry.
I was gonna say, like, even maybe if Johnny Gaudreau would have signed with them, I still think they would have needed maybe something else. So
And guys, is there anything else you guys would like to add before we conclude, or?
I'm okay. I don't know if Bratt Pack wants to add anything.
No, I mean, I really think we've covered everything. I mean, you guys do an awesome job. Clearly, very prepared on your Devil stuff. I know you guys are not Devils fans, but you guys did an awesome job touching everything. So, thank you for that.
You're welcome. And we just like to take the time to thank everyone in the chat. John, Paul, Rory, Sky, Megan, everyone that's been participating, debating, adding suggestions. Thank you so much, guys. And if you guys haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our podcast. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. We're very close. And if you guys get us there, by August 15, we will announce a winner for an NHL jersey of your choice. And most importantly, let's thank Bratt for coming on our platform today. Honestly, a fantastic job on your part. And thank you so much for giving us so much intel and coverage on the New Jersey Devils. We learned a lot today. And I think most importantly, our viewers were very fortunate and benefit off of that as well.
Yeah, if I could throw just one more thing in, I don't know. I know at least one of you said are familiar with the Twitter page, but one thing I do and one thing that kind of made my account so big is the Jesper Bratt is the best player in the NHL hashtag movement, whatever you want to call it. We do that. We do the acronym. So I know this is your guys' show, so you can totally say no to this. But when I do my own show, my Twitter Spaces, I try to sign off, and I ask every guest to sign off with a Jesper Bratt is the best player in the NHL. Are you guys comfortable throwing one in there?
Yeah, why not?
We can do it. We can absolutely do it.
We've said more controversial things here.
Oh, trust me.
Don't get me started
That's
on
not
that.
the worst thing we've had on this podcast, so don't worry about that.
All right, well, then I will let you guys, close up, sign off, and do whatever you want to do. I'll just throw in anyone listening here that, has enjoyed it. You can find me on Twitter at the Bratt Pack 63. Would love to, come on again sometime. Thank you so much for having me. And Jesper Bratt is the best player in the NHL.
And guys, I think we could all agree with that statement. Jesper
think
Bratt is
Jesper Bratt-
indeed the best player, and that's why he hasn't signed yet, because there is no contract in this NHL given to a player at his caliber that is going to match his
Jesper
value.
Bratt, he has to be he's better than McDavid. Like, he's the best player in the NHL. That's just
We're gonna be adding all the information in terms of the Bratt Pack in our description below once we're done this episode. And guys, thank you once again for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode, hopefully with another guest, and hopefully we'll reach 1,000 by then. But until then, have a nice night, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.